Okay, sorry, I forgot to record, so I have to repeat this. If you finish the argument 2 essay, you're copying your thesis statement at the top of the page. If you have a thesis statement, you're copying it at the top of the page. If you do not have a thesis statement yet, you are writing a thesis statement for your prompt. Yeah.
What's the prompt for
Mysamin is the 2000 prompt. Do you have your American Dream packet with you? I'll grab you one. Okay.
Dude,
it was that one.
Dude, Jackson, Jerry started.
Okay. So what do you think? Yeah, what do you think lyric is saying?
Jackson.
Yes. Okay, good. So that's all you need to paraphrase. That's all you need to paraphrase.
Oh, I literally did.
You can totally do that. Can I just see it? Yeah.
And so she was like saying something, and I was like, so I have no idea what you're saying. She like started wearing so like so then I was like, oh my god.
It does work, but in order to get it to work,
That was my whole story. And then my first reason was the personal communication, second one was world experience, third one was
actually, that's a good way to
like,
do it.
I was like, oh, yeah, I think just no,
Yeah. What was I going to say? For a while.
So what you
That O'Brien also.
this Richard guy. Transition into no, I would just say oh, and then I would say yeah, so it's kind of like it's what Shakespeare also sees in Lear. And then you talk about yourself, and then at the very end of that paragraph, you're saying this is fine. Does that maybe it's my word? Like I think we're gonna have to think of it. Yeah, I would move it up that part, and then I would think of it better.
I talked about this girl. I was like, well, this will be the social status.
Yeah, what I would do is
It was hard, right?
It was hard.
I
Right.
yeah, this is kind of like what you're saying, which is that rich people find themselves out of punishment. So something like in this case, this man shows a truth that Shakespeare also believes that when he writes this.
One of those, yeah.
And then ultimately, though, you're saying that this is what it comes down to justice, because
Getting off
all right, we're going to be like exchanging these, so I need to make sure that everyone's done this. Who has their thesis statement written at the top of their paper now?
Mine's pretty long. I got already.
Okay, while everyone else is catching up, this next part, there's instructions for each group too. If you have finished the essay, you're going to do a little bullet pointed list underneath your thesis statement of the order of your ideas. So you're just looking at your essay and you're like, oh, I explained this first, then this, then this. Make sense?
Wait, order of ideas like throughout your essay or just
Throughout your essay. So you're like, here's my thesis statement at the top, and then in my essay, these are the points that I proved in which order. Okay. If you have not written the essay now, this is your chance to write a little outline. So based on my thesis that I just wrote, here are the points that I'm going to prove, and this is the order I'm going to prove them in. Mess this up. I meant to do it on the back side of the paper. That's okay. Keep going. I'll figure it out.
So,
Yeah.
I had someone, sorry, who asked me an actual question.
Absolutely. Sarah, we should be on the top of that giant stack of packets.
So one of my sister's friends, got the
So we're dealing probably better.
4 on the AP chemistry test, right? And then
Which is
she was-
amazing.
Yeah, she's brilliant. And she's going to school. But to get her generals or whatever, she has to take chemistry credit, but it was supposed to be passed, off by her 4 on the chemistry test.
Yeah.
And they moved it, so you have to get 5 now. So I'm like, I hope that there's not similar things, and it depends on the school too.
What school did she go to?
Like the U,
The U, they made you get a 5? Was that just for pre-med?
Man,
I think so. I think it's not as, serious, you're not being pre-med, but pre-med you have to get 5, which I think is fine though. So like she's almost finished with school, and now she has to take a chemistry.
Yeah, because presumably then she took OChem, right? Right after. And so if she proved that she could pass OChem, then why do they need her to go back to Chem?
I don't know if she did organic. No, she
Well, if
did.
you're in
She
pre-med,
did.
you have
She
to, right?
did. Or it was when I think.
So it's basically she did the advanced chemistry in school, showed that she got it, and then they were like, but you have to show that you get a chemistry.
Or that, I can't remember if it was that or if she was supposed to like cancel that. And so like, now she has to take her last year or whatever. It was like they added it.
That's so annoying.
I wonder if they undid that though because of the pandemic thing, or there's more doctors and stuff.
Yeah.
That was like right before everything.
Maybe.
As far as who else, like, colleges require the 5 on the AP test, like, that's like,
Yeah. Well, and they'll give you elective credits if you don't get the 5. But like for this test, if you go to BYU or the U, you need to get a 4 to get the writing 2010 credit.
oh, to get like,
But you get 1010 if you get a 3 or above at any school.
This is a good incentive. I haven't even started studying for the ACT, so I don't know what I'm gonna do for this one.
The ACT is not a difficult test.
The ACT is a difficult test. It's just,
It's not
It
difficult.
depends what you mean by difficult. If it's difficult to get a 36, yes.
yes.
If it's difficult to get like a mean score,
A mean score, yeah, because a mean score for the ACT is like a 19 or something.
that's not difficult.
No, that's not too bad.
That's what I'm saying. I'm like, that's what I'm saying. If you think it's difficult to get a mean score, no.
Yeah.
If it's difficult to get a 36, yes. Yeah, you're just stressing about getting like a 20 or a 19.
Yes. Yeah. And you don't need that. Okay, so you're just writing. Yes.
we have one question.
Wow. She's saying that she's like, yeah, you guys don't get the ACT.
I like it.
I know, wait, yeah, what do you need?
I'm kind of deciding which one
That I don't.
If you're taking
So is the
another,
claim
so
that
like,
constitutes is state or something about.
And then all the rest is gonna be like.
Okay, so yeah.
You'll probably write that.
That was my part. I didn't wanna do it this year.
I said that on the Instagram.
Because my house.
And right now it looks like you're saying.
Yeah, I read it last night.
Use one like. Just say. I wrote my thesis and I was like, this is
Okay, so basically, thesis, you're gonna write it down this way. Needs to kind of tackle what you think the idea that the rich can buy their way out of justice. Yep. So in that prompt, it's like talking about, like Claire is talking about tattered clothes are small items with which basically if you wear formal clothes, your savings appear more easily. And for like nice stuff, you have yeah. So it's kind of like do the original justice. Is justice for all is kind of what and then you just get to decide. Well, you use it for example, so you don't use it for your thesis statement is all about what you think. So, according to you, in our country or in general, do rich people really good? And then you'll say, okay, I think that this is the way that justice is different, and it's because of this reason. So you can figure out what that is. Got it. So then when you write your essay, you'll use the nice plan and one of those points to kind of back up. Okay. You ready? Yeah. It gets you slower and then faster.
Only reason I'm here is
The only hesitation I have here is that it feels like there's three things.
I don't know, it's like, we're having fun, and I'm like, she's there.
It won, not you. Always find you. In the bottom. The best one for
I don't know if I like them.
Okay.
Really? You were
So it kind of sounds like they're saying, first of all, it's but they're showing the relationship between them. So that's one second. Yeah. I'm so sorry. I'm just okay.
Oh, I did. So my sister like all the
Did you include
So.
And
I like
some
really
point in
like
your
your
essay, I want you to use that as a measure to back up your argument.
I don't know what I do wrong, but I do something
Yeah.
wrong.
So it's, so you're basically the same.
It's funny, isn't I have to hear right, but that's what you told me.
Yeah.
That's what happened to me. I don't know why I did
Yeah. What I would say is the paraphrasing.
It's like, why?
And then your thesis statement should still be your big point. So you don't have to combine the paraphrase and the thesis. And instead, like paraphrasing the intro, you don't have to write that part right now. And basically what he's saying is the rich and kind are sins and their crimes behind our book.
So the
Well,
second.
considering I'm pretty sure that Giselle is just giving us the
So
equation
I
again.
Oh,
What?
wait,
Wait, just get the
intro or thesis? An intro. I think the way that you survey actually works, where you just like explain what you're actually saying is the wrong. Dina had one where she like chose a story from current. Chose a story from current events and like explained it and then got it. There's another style of intro that we're going to start from. Okay, has everyone got kind of like that outline going? Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Okay. The thing with all of these always and you get a lot of writers and take it so if you want to write a paper about learning and learn better this
Oh, yeah.
Okay, here's what I'm going to do. If you have not written a thesis yet, keep working on writing your thesis. If you have written a thesis, I kind of messed up this thing, so this is what I'm going to have you do, and I'm going to practice with yours. I'm going to have you fold the paper so that you can't see the order of your ideas, so that only the thesis is showing at the top. Okay. Aaliyah, I will come right back to you here. Oh, my knees pop so much. People don't like venturing into the unknown as they don't know what to expect and are afraid of the failure that might come with jumping into that unknown. But soon they will find that the unknown is the best place to be. I think that's a really strong thesis. So have you written the essay yet? Okay, has everyone folded it that way? Awesome. Now I want you to find someone to exchange it with. And the person you exchange it with, don't peek. I don't want you to see the order of their ideas. Started but not quite done. Awesome. So then why don't you just give me a list of the different paragraphs that you're thinking of writing and in which order. So which idea are you going to prove first, second, third, etc. And just write that in the chat box for me. And again, if you're still writing a thesis, then don't exchange. But if you have a thesis at the top of your page, exchange. Okay, now here's what I'm going to have you do. You don't know the order that they think is right? You only have their thesis statement. And what I want you to do is, based on their thesis statement, give them an order that you think is going to be right. So you're kind of approaching this thesis statement like with brand new eyes and saying, I think you should prove this point, then this point, then this point. Okay. And just write it down on the flap of paper that's underneath. Just write it right underneath. No, don't ask that question. You don't have to like, so Michaela just asked, how many paragraphs did you use? I want to get that same amount. The goal here isn't to match what they did, it's to show them what they can do better. So if they need more paragraphs than they already did, you can show them that by the way that you're going to structure the paper. Does that make sense? Okay. So don't ask any clarifying questions, just do it based on what they've given you.
All right, Aaliyah, I actually think you would, if I were the one, I'm gonna approach this like it's me looking at yours. I would do, my number one paragraph would actually be about this dangerous and new stuff. That's kind of the order that I would think would make the most sense. And that doesn't mean that it's the absolute right, but just judging by your thesis statement, that's what I'm looking at here.
Once you've decided what their order is, you can give the paper back to them. Looks like people are still working on that though, so let's wait a couple minutes before I tell you the next part. I'm going to do the civil disobedience prompt. Or should I do the, I'm going to do the Lear prompt this time because that one seems to be tough. What? I was, but I have to spice things up. I'm new.
It's weird, the way you outlined is actually like how I
Okay, it looks like those people are done. So give that back to the person now. And I want you to have a discussion about, one, why the order was different or the same. And which order you think works best. Okay, have that conversation with your partner now.
Okay.
So I'm not exactly sure how she wants to write this. I just kind of like separate them as points and ask questions. I can explain yours first. So I thought it was like good. I would like to put the counter argument.
That's basically
kind of like the out of the way. So like I just like how
I just found
like,
you got the three different.
and then I brought up like some points.
My first paragraph is kind of about how
And then
by going to the
I thought it was the like mix.
and then programs create knowledge, discover more, and then taking life like that.
your favorite one, and then like later on you go more into depth, like how big should be it, and just gets even more specific.
Allie, we are, did you write your argument too yet? Okay, so take your thesis statement from your argument two and just write it at the top of that line piece of paper. Yes. Yes. Okay, now that you've gotten a chance to talk about it a little bit, let's talk about that first question. With you and your partner, did anybody have one where the order was relatively the same? Yours was relatively the same as what Jenna thought it should be? Okay, cool. Usually that is a sign of a very strong thesis statement that is specific and kind of like provides a strong outline for your paper, but it is also an example of kind of like the logic of the ideas lining up in people's heads where you and your audience really gelled in that instance, right? Tell me here about somebody whose order was different and why you think it might have been different. Yeah, Abby?
Well, mine was completely different, because I didn't really put my reason into my thesis statement, just to go back and redo that.
Okay, good. Did anybody else have an instance? Actually, Kenton, were you about to raise your hand? Yeah. Yeah. Okay, let me show you as an example. That's what I was about to go into. So how many of you guys, you think the order was wrong because your thesis was too vague? Yeah, that tends to be probably the #1 issue here. When I tell you to break down the thesis into a logical order, you're unable to do that if your thesis doesn't provide a logical framework for your argument, right? So I gave you an example right up here. I say, this is for the of Mice and Men King Lear prompt. And basically the prompt gives you a little passage from King Lear and it says, rich people can hide their sins in nice clothes, but when poor people wear tattered clothes, all of their sins show on the surface. So it's about justice for the rich versus the poor, right? And I've decided to talk mostly about the problem with that one, as far as the rich getting away with stuff. I could have talked about the poor not being able to get away with stuff. Like I could have had the opposite side, right? But for my focus, I want to talk about the rich. And you could have found a way to talk about both as well. But here I say rich people tend to escape justice for their mistakes because the justice system depends on capital to run. So what I've got here is I've got my claim. Rich people tend to escape justice for their mistakes. I'm agreeing with King Lear. I totally think that rich people are able to hide their crimes behind their money, you know? And now I have to figure out why that is. And that's the reason part of your thesis statement. You don't want multiple reasons in your paper. You might have a couple if they go together logically, but in this case, I've got one, and I say it's because the justice system depends on capital to run. And now I'm going to break down my paper logically to prove that one reason is true. Yeah.
So you say this happens because of this reason?
Yes. Yes. So you can think about it in terms of what we've sort of been talking about in class. What is it about America that enables something to happen? You can think about it in terms of consequences. Here's the consequence because of this thing. There's a lot of ways to do it, but you're trying to just say, here's my claim, here's the reason my claim is true. And to break this down then, you're gonna have to be a little bit more creative than you would be in a 5-paragraph essay where you've got multiple reasons and so you know how to, you know, that each paragraph is a reason, right? So here I've got rich people tend to escape justice for their mistakes because the justice system depends on capital to run. Everybody on your piece of paper, we're just treating this like scrap paper now. On your piece of paper, write down what you think my first body paragraph should be about. In that thesis statement, what should my first body paragraph be about?
Aaliyah, write it in the chat box. I know you're not able to see it that well. I'll write it in the chat box for you. Okay, now the nice thing about this style of thesis statement is that the order of ideas are kind of like given to you. So what should be my first paragraph, do you think? Did I scare you by saying, it's obvious? No, just what did you write down for your first paragraph? Okay, good. Awesome. So what are some crimes that you can think of that's happened?
Tax fraud,
What was it?
tax fraud.
Oh. I do O.J. Simpson.
The biggest.
Controversial pick in 1994 or whatever. Anybody? Anything else? Another rich person? I feel like celebrities get away with DUIs like all the time.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my gosh, I'm so sad. It just came out yesterday that Bruce Springsteen got a DUI. He has never been a drinker. Like I think he's going through things.
Wait, he just got a
This is not
DUI?
the time, he's kinda old.
I know he's 71 now.
And
He
he's
just got a DUI?
He's
Like,
never had issues
like
with
a
addiction.
dancer?
Like he's always been like a very clean cut rock star.
My guy.
wasn't he in like one of the Super Bowl ads or something? I guess that's Super
I
Bowl
choose to
ad
prove that he's honest. No, he's talked about in his memoir, this is such a tangent, I'm a bad teacher. He's talked about in his memoir that he has had problems with drinking too much when he's going through depression, and that's why I am really scared for Bruce. I gotta see another tour. Okay. So I'm gonna have a paragraph here about rich people getting away with crime. If I want to, it could be kind of interesting to have stuff like this, the kind of like low-key kind of crimes. I could say, with minor crimes. And then I could have a paragraph about how they get away also with major crimes. And in that case, I could talk about O.J. Simpson if I wanted to, hire the best lawyers, all that stuff. So I actually think that could be a good way to break it down because I'm going to have different reasons that the justice system depends on capital. So let's say those are my first two paragraphs. What do you think my third paragraph should be? Write it down.
Third? Like,
My third body paragraph, my fourth paragraph
Like
overall.
you can make it up, or is it like it's
So basically, you're going to look at my thesis, and you're going to see that the first thing I'm proving is that they get away with minor crimes. The second thing I'm proving is that they get away with major crimes. So what should be my next point in my paper? Logically, what would be the next thing that I need to prove to prove my thesis overall? Just writing that down. Okay, what do you think? What should be my third body paragraph? Yeah, Ella?
Maybe what happens in the justice system?
Excellent. So I'm going to have here a paragraph about justice system funding, right? So I'm going to have stuff about like how public defenders are paid. I'm going to have stuff about judges. I'm going to have stuff about courthouses. Basically, the whole point of my paragraph is going to be that it takes a lot of money to run the justice system.
Yeah.
Okay, so I've proven that they get away with stuff. I've proven that the justice system takes a lot of money. Now what do I need to prove? Yeah, Jesse.
could you like say like how they don't
Sorry, say it again.
like celebrities like don't go to jail?
Okay, yeah, I think here, I'm gonna talk about that they get away with the crimes, tax fraud, no jail. And so over here, I need to talk about like why they don't go to jail. Why don't they go to jail, do you think?
Like their snitches.
Because like a jury will see them and think like, you're so awesome, like OJ, right? Like you're such a hero. I don't want you to go to jail, or I don't know. Maybe OJ didn't do it. But so their status might prove that, right? Here's the issue with that, and this is a really, really good point. So right here, I could have said something about status because I think that's true. I think rich people don't serve time for DUIs a lot of times because they're like me, and people are like, "Oh, Bruce shouldn't go to jail. I love Bruce," you know. So everybody would be like, look way down on a judge that would send that celebrity to jail, and that would be a status concern. But I didn't include that in my thesis. All I want to talk about is the money issues. So even though that is true, I'm not going to write about it in this particular paper. Make sense? Okay, Sadie said, what do you think?
I said like some sort of connection, like the rich, like maybe they control the justice system because of the funding.
Ah, good. So something like, because of the justice system costing so much money, it's got to be funded somehow, right? And they can rely on wealthy people to keep it going. Okay, what are some ways that wealthy people who might get charged with a crime could invest that money back in the justice system, keep it running? Okay, good. So expensive lawyers. Sam? Oh, did you have your hand up?
I was thinking, but then I wasn't entirely sure, like, judges and stuff, when they get elected.
Election funds. Awesome. Yeah, they'll need some wealthy donors. Kennedy?
Things like bail and
Bail. Bail's huge for that. Okay, so then ultimately, I'm going to say because of the funding, they can rely on the wealthy to keep it going. And then I'm going to go back to Jesse's point about them not going to jail, right? So because we have ways to pay, basically, to get out of jail, wealthy people are more likely to be able to pay. Bruce Springsteen is one of the most, like the highest earning rock star in America. He's going to hire a great lawyer for his DUI, whereas like a poor person probably wouldn't have a lawyer at all. They'd show up at the court and they'd get someone assigned to them, right? And he's probably going to get some sort of fine that is going to be a drop in the bucket for him, you know, like it's going to be like what he makes in an hour to pay for that fine. And the justice system benefits from that because they're like, awesome, we just got that money and you were able to pay for it, right? And he benefits from it because now he doesn't have to go to prison for a DUI. And everybody ends up happy except for the poor.
So you focus on capital, like I'm getting all these random facts about prisons in my mind, but you're just focusing on one aspect.
For me, I'm focusing on the one aspect. And look, I've got 5 body paragraphs here. That's already a very long essay. It's going to be longer than the 2 pages I give you, right? This is going to be more like a 3-page, maybe even into 4-page essay because of how many paragraphs I have. And that's why my thesis is so narrow, and why I don't want to get into stuff like what happens in prison or status or you know, public opinion. Yeah.
And then, so this is just for practice. So like when you're success, how do you write 5 paragraphs?
Hopefully we go over this stuff enough and you write enough essays that you're just able to do this without outlining and you can do it very quickly.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the answer. It's like through practice, I would be able to write these 5 paragraphs.
Physically, I can only write like 3 pages.
That's true. Yeah, because you're like, you can't speed up your hand even more. If that were the case, I'd probably erase this one so that it was less. Yeah.
But like, do they dock you if you don't finish it?
Yeah, you won't get the sophistication point if you don't finish the essay. Yeah.
Just conclude it at any point you feel necessary.
Yeah, and sometimes, yeah, you have to just sort of like sneak a conclusion in there. But just so you know, for my conclusion, I'm going to say, why does this essay matter? And then I will write a 3-sentence tops conclusion about why this is an important topic.
Restating your thesis, right?
I wouldn't necessarily, but it's hopefully like by the end, when you get to your conclusion, your thesis statement has become so clear that you don't need to just repeat it, that you can just wrap things up.
Is that just for argument of essays, or for just all essays?
That's for all essays. Once you've practiced that 5-paragraph format, we're now breaking everything that you learned,
But
right?
don't some like essay formats, like literature, like formats include the restating of your thesis?
Yes, until you start writing for things like publication. And then when you read something in a journal, you won't see them repeat their thesis statement. Yeah. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to practice writing a paragraph now. Everybody needs a Google Doc open. If you've written the argument 2 paper, you can just keep that open and you're going to choose one paragraph that you want to revise. And if you have not written your argument 2, you're going to choose one of the points in your essay that you want to write as a paragraph. Yes? I have to show how to do the paragraph. Can you stay after class for like 3 minutes? Okay. I'm gonna do this with you. I think your paragraph structure is very strong as I'm reading your essays. I don't think that this is our weak point. I think structure and intros are our weak point. So, but it doesn't hurt to go over it. Oh, I hate how it does that. Okay, I'm going to just write my first body paragraph, which is that rich people get away with minor crimes. So for my topic sentence, I am not going to mention any of the examples that I'm going to use in that paragraph. Your topic sentence is supposed to be the small part of the argument that you are going to be focusing on in this paragraph. So I really could just say, rich people sounds informal. I'm going to say wealthy people. Oh, yeah. There we go. I'm going to say wealthy people tend to avoid punishments for their crimes. This is the narrow topic sentence. So whatever paragraph you are revising now, or whatever paragraph you're writing now, try and write a topic sentence that is focused on the argument itself. I'm going to give you a minute to do that.
Topic sentence, like for like a topic paragraph that we have?
Yeah.
Like the first, second, or third one that we had. Like,
Yeah.
Of the reason.
Because if I'm going to name one thing that is that we as a class are struggling with in our paragraph structure, it is the topic sentences. The rest of it feels really good to me, but the topic sentences, sometimes, I'll show you, sometimes people are writing stuff like this. Don't write this. Something like, something where I'm putting the example that I'll be using in the paper in my topic sentence. And I don't want to do that. I want to focus on the actual argument and not the examples that prove the argument.
So
yeah, Kenton? Well, okay, so let's say this is my first paragraph, right? And I blah, 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 I write the whole thing. I don't need a transition sentence in my first body paragraph. But a transition in the second body paragraph could be something like, no, I don't want to start that way. Sorry, I gotta think about it. We did major crimes next, right? So something like that, I think. So that I am basically in a transition, what you're trying to do is you're trying to cite what came before and then move into the new stuff. And this one, I'm having a hard time avoiding having a list, so I'm going to move into the next one and show you, which I think the next point was about how the justice system is run by money, right? So something like, something like that. The fact that wealthy people get away with crime more often than poor people highlights the way our justice system is dependent on capital to run. So that, again, I've mentioned what came before and then I'm moving into the new information. That makes sense? Okay. All right, let's try writing this paragraph then. So I've got my topic sentence, wealthy people tend to avoid punishments for their crime. And now I need a couple sentences that explain what I mean by that. So I don't want to take it for granted that my audience is going to know exactly what I mean, all the parts of that argument, and is ready to move into my examples, because I hope it's a little more complicated than that. So I'm going to say something like, when someone who is charged with a So I've got now some sort of example here, or some sort of explanation here. It's not well written. I never write well the first time. That's just my writing process. I kind of bleh on the page and then I go back and do like some serious revision. So I've said here, when someone earns money in a high income bracket is charged with a crime, they are more likely to avoid prison sentences. The crimes they're charged with are the same as those in a lower income bracket, but the punishments for those crimes are usually minor and do not inconvenience their everyday life. So I've started to get into the explanation now for my topic sentence. Okay, now I want to include my example. Who did we decide we were going to include for this? Oh, let's just talk about Bruce still. All right. Or should we talk about tax fraud? No, I don't know much about taxes. I'm going to talk about Bruce. I know more about drinking than I do about taxes. Just kidding. Okay, so I'm going to say something like, actually a DWI in New Jersey. I don't know. Yes, I think so.
That could equal more money for you, like the government give you money. Tax evasion is just using loophole, like shipping your money to some other country. This was illegal. Tax fraud is illegal. Tax evasion is also illegal, but it's what you mean by tax evasion.
My giant jacks. Videos are crimes that result in
You basically say, oh, you basically say, oh, my company base is this place, so my taxes are taxed in the United States, they're supposed to be taxed over there, they already are. So you basically send all of your revenue over there, because that's where your company is. But you place something that has no taxes, then you make money, because you don't spend taxes on stuff in the US. Basically what every single executive does.
Okay, here. I'm going to bring our attention back to this because we're about to finish. What I'm showing you here is how much detail I'm using. One thing I'm seeing in your paragraphs is someone might say something like, for example, Bruce Springsteen was charged with a DWI and served no jail time. So in conclusion, you can see that people avoid punishments, right? But here I've been trying to add in details. Some of them are stupid and I'm going to have to delete them, but I say something like, he's driving along a quiet New Jersey highway, you know? I'm trying to like tell it like a story. So it's kind of like your intros where you add descriptive detail in order to capture your audience's interest throughout, and your examples are your way to do that. So your assignment for next time is to revise your argument 2 paper. If you've already written your argument 2, then you're golden. You're just going to go in, you're going to revise it and resubmit it. If you haven't written your argument 2, I need you to take a day in between writing the argument and rewriting the argument. It's so important to get like fresh eyes on that. And so if you haven't written it yet, write your argument 2. You have a 3-day leeway for the rewrite as well. So you can take a day and then do the rewrite. This part's important. When I am talking about rewrites, I am not talking about going through and fixing cosmetic things. Like I'm not talking about fix a comma here or a misspelling there, or even 1 or 2 sentences. I'm saying you can keep some of your same ideas for sure. You can keep some of your order, but you are going through and you are looking at every word of that paper and you're making sure that every single word was the very best word you could use in that paper. And every single sentence is written in the very best way it can be. So when I look at changes from the first draft to the second draft, I'm hoping there's at least like 70% of it has changed. You know, I'm asking for some major revisions here. You look, you read it, you're like, that's a good sentence, then keep that sentence, but be critical as you're reading. Okay, does anyone have any questions? The rewrite is technically due next class, which is the 18th, Wednesday.
So do we just submit it like the same page?
No, that's a great question. There is a assignment on Canvas called Argument 2 Rewrite. You submit it there. Okay, let's what's your desk?
When do we put the paper?
Keep it. Oh wait. You almost died? Who didn't get a flower? Will you take mine because I don't want it? Okay. I felt really saying that to a boy. That's really nice. But,
I can't believe.
So I need to give my grade for this class today. Oh, so Monday I have wrestling for state. I need to It's so many grades up. I just wanna know what I should do to get my grade up to. Just
What
like
is it right now? Do you know the percentage?
I think it's 50.
I knew it was gonna happen. I know it's gonna
Did you do an argument one paper?
I'm still working on
That's the main thing.
Yeah.
So finish your argument one paper, and that makes a big difference because that's really the only, like the biggest thing in here right now. And then that'll bring you up. Let me think. Do I want to let you do this? Yes, I'm gonna let you do the American Dream essay too.
I think I turned
You
one
did
in.
turn it in.
Yeah.
Oh, that's my bad. Okay, I'll
It
go in
wasn't
and.
very good, but
You'll get
at least I'll
points
get
for it.
something.
Okay, I'll go in
Something.
and add that in, and then
Yeah.
you finish argument one, and that should bring you up to a D.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also wanted to, I need a little help with my thesis. It's just really short and vague, and I don't know how to make it better.
Would you be able to come in right after school and talk to
Yes,
us?
I would for a few minutes. I
That's all I
practiced at
have too.
3. Yeah.
Okay, so come in
so
for
I
a
could
couple
get
minutes and
that.
we'll look at it. Okay,
Thank you.
thanks, Audrey. Okay, so what are we looking at here? The order or the?
I feel like I might have like more than one reason, or it's just like bulky, or
Is this your whole thesis? Ooh, yeah.
Oh.
Okay, so what I want you to do is right now, this is your intro, not your thesis. You've basically used what's called a funnel intro instead of the hook, which is totally great. I don't want to enable diction now, which is fine, but it's basically you're introducing the idea, and then this right here is acting at use your thesis. The wealthy get to do what they want without consequences, as if justice simply does not apply to people above a certain pay grade. That is your claim. And you do have too many reasons here. So what you need to choose is the primary reason, the number one reason you think that this happens. So is it because we focus on appearance? Is it because the rich wrote the laws? Or is it because of their resources? So you've got 3 different reasons there, and in your thesis you've got to pick out of these 3 what's the most important one. And then you can break it down in the way that we did it there.
okay.
Make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sadie.
I'm just running the bathroom really quick, so if I'm late, that's
Okay, thanks.
Can I go to my painting class?
For what?
To paint?
No. Why would you be able to do that? Oh yeah, no, you need to be here today.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm really sad Emma's gone. She's only in my 8th one, but she's gone. I'm really